Hello everyone, Krydax here, and welcome back to pYanodon's Season 3. We're at an exciting stage of the game where we're looking towards a rail base. And I also just realized I had forgotten to clean off this belt, so we need to do that real quick. It's still got stone corrupted in it. So I need to, let's see, what's the easiest way to do this? Probably stone filtered on the final inserter. And it's not grabbing anything. What did I do wrong? Oh, that last one. What? That certainly looks like a stone piece. Like graphically. Right there. If I turn off alt mode, that really feels like there's a piece of stone on that one. I can also just manually hoover it up, I guess. And then there's a lot of stone mixed in. Let me just do this. This will be easier. Only take a minute, and then it will be done. Hey, we gotta craft iron chests. It's been a while. Been a long while. Now, how does that not have power? I just put a power pole there. I mean, there's a power pole right here. Those power poles don't have power. Got it. Then how do these buildings have power? Ah, these power poles. Ha. LOL. Alright, I put power poles on two sides of the building. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. Now, there's still stone in these ones. Let me grab a few more here. Alright, I'm not seeing any more stone. And then... I guess I gotta use construction bots now. That should clear out over time, I think. Maybe. How far back does it go? Pretty far. Yikes. Wait, I did fix this, right? Yeah, I fixed it. I fixed it. Goodness. Okay, that's just gonna take a couple minutes to figure itself out. Let's get rid of this gravel. And get rid of some more stone. There we go. Okay, so that's good to go. I wanted to address another concern, which revolves around something we were talking about last episode. Kind of the recipe switching issue. And this is just going to be a generic theme that we'll have to be dealing with recipe switching in general. Wow, I have a lot of tailings. How much tailings is it per nexalit? 500. So 5,000 is 10 raw nexalit. 50 grand is 100 raw nexalit. 250 grand is only 500 raw nexalit. Okay, so that's not that much nexalit that's sitting there. Anyway, so yeah, this whole situation here. So we need to talk about it. A couple people noticed, and reasonably so, that this might flicker. Created the first pynobot! Yay! Our first little dude. Oh, I'm so excited for that. We'll get to that in a minute. But for now, let's talk about kind of what this looks like here. So basically, what's going to happen is this is going to have, let's say it has 1050 hot air, right? Okay, it's still going to be running the normal solder recipe. Actually, what's going on? What? Oh, yeah, we'll get to that in a second. Because this little arrow output does not output trash slots, apparently. So we're gonna need that. Yeah. Anyway, that's a different problem. So for now, we'll talk about the problem of the flickering. So the hot air is going to eventually come down below 1,000, and then what's going to happen when it goes below... we'll actually see if we can watch it happen here. We might be able to, because it's already down to 1,100 here, and it uses 50 per craft. So yeah, we're going to see this here in a moment. Maybe. There we go. So you can see it goes to no recipe until it empties its trash, then it'll do that. And so that's one issue, is that it uses the hot air that's needed, and then it spits it back out, and then it uses that recipe, and then it's gonna be spitting back, it's gonna be constantly spitting stuff back into the molten solder pipe, which is full. So it's going to be voiding solder. So there's a couple issues. Sorry, I just wanted to see what it was doing. Let me actually explain what's happening now. It's almost easier with a different system here. And I should probably just have some pie tanks. So let's craft a few. So situation one that you need to be aware of is that when a building... Oh, that was weird. I like somehow built it. Oh, the construction bots built it. That's what happened. So when a building has a recipe set and then it changes recipes, let's say it's not running. Let's say this has sand castings in it, and then we change the recipe, but the building was never running in the first place. Are there any of these where I actually... Here, let me just grab some sand castings so we can exemplify this in action. Of course I can't craft a casting unit. Of course I can't craft a casting unit. What am I missing? Intermetallics. Well, we need those for all sorts of things, so let's go grab some more intermetallics. Grab those bad boys. And there we go. Okay, so anyway... When you need to switch a recipe, it's going to put the other items into the output slot. And you might know this if you've played Space Age, and you've kind of played with this sort of thing. Oh yeah, construction drones are not going to compete with pYanobots, so that's actually quite annoying. Interesting. Alright, so let's say we have a constant combinator and a wire. And this is set to set recipe. And let's say we go to... This one has aluminum plate with the 63 version. This one has the aluminum plate 50 version. And then it'll set it to the 50 version. Now, if I then turn that off, it'll put the trash items into the trash slots, and it will not have a recipe set yet. It's in this intermediate state until all the trash items are taken out, then it sets to the new recipe. What this means is it's going to kick out everything, including the fluids. And what's interesting about the fluids is it doesn't kick fluids out to an output slot, it kicks them back into the input pipeline. Which is really interesting. Like, you know, it's very different. Like, imagine with belts, it's like it's shoving the items back onto the belt, right? And that just isn't how belts work. So it doesn't do it with belts and items, but that's kind of conceptually what it's doing, is it's trying to shove the items back onto the belt. And if the items can't fit back on the belt, it voids them. So... Unfortunately, there is no like output fluid slot, you know, that you can recycle things with. So what that means is you actually have to, if you want to account for this, you need a top-up valve prior to the input or some other form of restriction so that there's actually space in these pipes if it changes recipes for stuff to get kicked back into the pipeline. Because if there's no top-up valve and this is just a full pipeline at 100% full, as soon as it changes recipes, it tries to kick stuff back into here, but there's no room, so it just voids it. So you're going to be voiding all sorts of fluids if you're not careful. So that's kind of one thing I wanted to talk about. The next thing is this whole flickering issue. So if we were to have, you know, hot air here, I need to turn off my personal robots or whatever, so that my construction drones can work. Oh, they still don't work? Oh, they still don't work. Interesting. No, I retired them. What am I talking about? Sorry, that's me being a dum-dum. I don't have any of these construction drones in my inventory right now. Oh, there's the vacuum cleaner for Blueprint Shotgun. That's amazing. Oh, I love it. Okay, anyway, so the flickering issue is going to be like, let's say this is at 1050, and then this is set to say hot air, you know, is greater than 1,000. Then that'll say, yes, hot air is greater than 1,000. So it'll set this recipe to a hot air recipe. Then that will allow hot air to flow in. As soon as the hot air starts flowing in, it might not even be enough yet to start a craft, and then it'll go down to 999 is in this building, and then that immediately changes the recipe to be the not hot air version, and then it'll kick the hot air back into this. So it'll be switching back and forth until we have 1100 hot air, or sorry, it only needs 50 hot air. So until we have 1051 hot air, and then 50 hot air can flow in, and then this still has 1,000 in the tank, so it'll stay, and then it'll start the recipe. But then on the next one, it'll have that same issue. So it'll switch back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And that's obviously really annoying. It's not intrinsically a problem if you have proper recycling of the items in the output slot, but it is pretty annoying. Also, what I'm confused about is how solder ends up in the trash slot, because yeah, that's super weird. When it switches recipes, even items in the output slot then get considered to be a trash slot, and it's not putting them onto the belt like it normally would. Even though it's the same item, when it switches recipes, it changes what it was considered to be the output slot to now be considered a trash slot, and therefore will not flow out of the arrow. So those are all really important things to note that we will have to basically handle and take care of. I'm actually not entirely sure what that means, but it could mean frustrating things for the future. Anyway, back to this hysteresis problem. So what we can do is kind of create an RS latch, or SR latch, depending on how you want to think about it, which will essentially only trigger a recipe switch when we get to a certain threshold, and then it won't trigger the switching back the other direction for a while. And that kind of guarantees you're not going to have that halfway issue, the hysteresis issue. The other problem, though, is it still is going to switch recipes and kick items out at some point, right? And that's just going to happen, because like when it runs the final hot air one, and then we no longer have enough hot air, and this is finally switched back to sending the signal of the regular version, then what's going to happen is as soon as those aluminum plates get output here, it's going to go into that intermediate state. That aluminum is now treated as trash. It kicks out all of the aluminum it had buffered, and it kicks out the hot air it had buffered, and it'll kick the sand casting into a trash slot as well. So then we're going to need some form of dealing with the stuff in the trash slot. We're going to need the ability to outflow aluminum back into the aluminum pipe. And then eventually, once we've dealt with all the solids that are in the trash slots, then it'll switch back to this version. So the other thing to note in this kind of system is that there's going to be downtime. There's going to be downtime where the inserters have to outsert before it can switch the recipe. Because normally when it's running, the inserters that are outserting the output are not interfering with the building running. The building can run full time, and the inserters can just work to keep up with the building as it's running. But in this case, the building is actually stopped crafting, and it's waiting on the inserters. So that's another thing to note in the back of your mind, that if you're doing this type of, you know, system, if you need the building to have 100% uptime, then it's not going to work. This system will never have 100% uptime. Now you can get it really close with either a lot of inserters or using multiple loaders or other things like that, or you could even you know, restrict the input so that you don't have as many inputs to deal with when it switches them over. Like, there are a few ways you can reduce the downtime when it's switching, but there will always be some downtime unless you do something really fancy. In fact, no, there will always be downtime because of the output slot issue. I guess you could not switch it until the output slot's empty, but even then that takes a moment. But if it's the arrow version, it might be instant. Anyway, I don't know, that's a different problem. Regardless, there'll be some downtime, probably. Or you have to do something really complicated to make it 0 downtime. I would just expect, you know, my building only runs 95% of the time instead of 100% of the time, and you'll be fine. So anyway, that's kind of all. That's all we need to talk about. The only thing left to talk about is how do you actually make an RS latch here. And so what we need to do is feed the output back into itself, and then this becomes kind of easy because you can. There's a couple things you can do actually. So basically the recipe signal is going to work like before with a constant combinator, and that's just going to be a constant solder of the regular version. And then this guy is going to be outputting a -1 on the solder regular version when we want to be switched, which is 5x solder, and then we want to output the hot air solder. So that's all correct. But then we also output kind of a ghost amount of hot air. Now there's multiple ways to do an RS latch. Another way is to do a green signal. Before we had this ability to set constant, this was the easy way to do it, is you would do like a green signal, or maybe we do like a check mark signal, whatever, it doesn't matter. And so we would want hot air to be greater than 1500 and, no, sorry, hot air greater than 1500, and we start outputting all this stuff. Or we have a combination of things that are true. We want hot air to be greater than 500 and a green checkmark signal is 1. So then as soon as it starts sending the green checkmark signal, it sees the green checkmark signal. It also sees hot air is greater than 500. And so even when the hot air drops below 1500, this is now a true condition, this anded together situation. And so this is true until hot air finally drops below 500, and then this is not true, and this is not true, so the whole thing just turns off. And then once it turns off, there's now no green signal that's looping in itself. So then it will wait until the hot air rises back above 1500, and then it'll switch over again. So this way, it kind of sustains itself so that the hot air switching isn't a problem. So this right here is one way to do it. Another way to do it that I actually am thinking might be more elegant, though I'm not sure if it's going to create an infinite loop. Let's just test it. What if we just added a ghost amount of hot air to the system? What if we just added 1000 hot air to the system? Then will it just keep growing on every tick, or will it actually work? Let's find out. We'll start with a constant combinator that tells us we've got 1500 hot air. I'm starting to think this might just infinite loop us here. And it'll just, the hot air signal will grow and grow and grow. No, it doesn't. Okay. Because the hot air signal it sees is, so there's 2000 hot air. It goes into the input combined with 1000. So it sees 3,000. Then this one outputs 1,000 on that tick. Yeah, this is never adding any amount. It's not doing hot air plus a certain amount. That would grow infinitely. But it's just adding a flat 1,000 hot air at the most ever. So this is another way to do it. Because now hot air can reduce down to 1,000 and it'll still be working. But then when hot air reduces down to 200, oops, extra 0. When hot air reduces down to 200, boom, it turns off. And now it won't turn back on until hot air grows above 1,500. So now we have an even easier way for an RS latch. Now we just add an input or an output that matches the thing we're counting. And it kind of creates the buffer range. This is kind of like how frequently do you want the RS latch to turn on and off? And now it's based on that number alone. I actually think this is even simpler than it was before. And obviously this part, depending on, you can put whatever set of outputs here you want. In this case, we're turning off the 5x solder and turning on the 7x solder. So there you go. That's kind of the 20-minute. Sorry it took that long. Oh, interesting. The vacuum time of Blueprint Shotgun is related to the deconstruction time. So it's longer on longer buildings. Okay, so now what do we need to do? What we need to do is this. So that way it'll just always output. No! Frickin' heck. Okay, we're good. I meant to control click on that. There we go. So how do we actually fix this now? So we fix the hysteresis problem by just adding an output of hot air. That's so easy. By the way, I just want to say, nobody else suggested this. This is my solution. I'm very proud of it. I came up with this. I'm thinking of that internet meme, like, this is mine. And then like someone turns around and holds up the same thing to the internet and says, this is mine. So yeah, we could have it, let's just have it switch recipes once in a while, maybe even 2,000. It's also worth noting this number needs to be smaller than this number. Like that, this is not gonna work because this is gonna add a fake signal even when we're out of hot air, and that's bad. So this number needs to be larger, let's say 3,000. So when we've got 3,000 hot air, we'll switch to the hot air recipe until we're down to 1,000 hot air here. Well, less than 1,000 hot air here. We'll then add with 2,000, and that'll be less than 3,000, and the whole thing will stop until we get back to 3,000. So that will just switch it once in a while, if that makes sense. And so that works. And then we also need to deal with the output of, solder being in the output slot, which is why I just put a loader here. And that way, the output's always going to work out, even if it's a trash slot. I'd like to see it switch, so I'm going to add a signal of hot air here just to test it. So we'll add 2,000 hot air. Okay, so let's turn that on. Oh, by the way, there's a hotkey now for this. This is really cool. This is another, like, if you don't know this, it could change your life depending on the type of circuit stuff you use. What's it called? Toggle? Toggle. The problem is I don't know what the actual thing is called. Shoot. Toggle entity. There it is. So toggle entity. I don't know why it says debug. This isn't. I don't think it's just only a debug thing. I think it just works normally. Shift mouse button 4. Okay. So if I do shift mouse button 4, yep, it just turns it on. So you don't actually need to open up the GUI. So now it's switched to the hot air version. Still seems to output things fine. Toggle that back off. Yeah. Seems to work fine. You'll notice it did stop for a moment there though, because it has to output all the solder first. So there's a little bit of downtime when it switches. Uh-oh, why is it switching back? This is on. It shouldn't be switching back. Oh, we don't have enough in here. Wait, what's going on? Oh, I didn't link this back onto itself. Sorry. There we go. That was the problem. Okay. So now it shouldn't switch back anytime soon. And then... yeah, there's no downtime. It's running, it's running, it's running, it's running. I turn this off, and then it should switch back. And there was a little bit of downtime. So that's the thing to note, is that there could be some downtime when it switches, and you just need to pay attention to that. And the other thing to note is the molten solder is going to get wasted if I don't have a top-up valve situation here. So the question is, how much does it buffer? It's also kind of a bummer. It doesn't tell you. Is it 2 recipes worth? How much does it buffer fluid inputs in fluid buildings? That's just something I just don't actually know the answer to. Like, let's look at a soil extractor. It's 2 recipes worth of water in there. 2 recipes worth of creosote. It seems like it's 2 recipes worth for most things. Fish oil in here is 2 recipes worth. I'm just gonna pick some other random things. 2 recipes worth of water. What else uses fluids? That buffers 2 recipes worth of water. Okay. It's seeming like fluid buffers are just 2 recipes worth, and that's how simple it is. Got it. Alright, so that being the case, that means this could buffer up to 100 solder, so it would need to spit back out 100 solder, which each pipe can hold 100. So if I do a top-up valve onto 10, then this would hold 30 out of 300. That leaves a decent amount left. And I'll probably have to come up with some sort of like blueprinted way to do this so that I don't have to make it every time. But that way it can spit out the 100 solder when it changes recipes. Uh-oh. I seem to have found a bug. This top-up valve is letting through way too much fluid. That's bad. Yeah, that's bad. Is it because it's 1 tick of pumping is filling it too much full? I will... what's the timestamp on this video? 28:30, okay. String Weasel. He's the person, or they're the person who made this valves mod. And it seems like, and this may be a bug that's unfixable, so it might be one of those things where you have to manage it by having more space in the destination. But it might be that 1 tick of pumping is so fast. Because what is 1 tick? 1 tick is 600 units if the input is totally full. So if your destination pipe situation is only 500 units big, it's just gonna fill the entire thing in 1 tick. So I wonder if there's anything that can be done about that. I would technically call that a bug. I understand that in the strictest sense of the word, it might not be a bug, like everything's working as intended, and that just happens to be a consequence of the fluid system. But in terms of like expected behavior, that's certainly not what you expect a top-up valve to do. So what we need to do then is we actually need the top-up valve to be like back here, so that all of these little underground pipes are adding to the totality of solder. And then that way we don't have that same issue. And funnily enough, I am partially to blame for this problem. Now you might ask, wait, how? What? How is this your fault, Krydex? Well, it's partially my fault because, and I'm just gonna do that. Yeah, see, it gets 400 units immediately. I'm partially to blame because, sorry, one second. I guess on this side, the input can only have so much. Also, I'm not dealing with this ash, am I? Oh, the ash is piling up faster than I expected. Gosh, these things burn through a lot of coal. Anyway, I'm partially responsible because I complained about the valves being slower than the pyanodon's pumps. But in this particular context, the valves are too fast. And just in general, that's a really important thing to note with overflow or top-ups. They move at minimum 600 units in worst case scenario. And so if 600 units being plopped from one side to the other is going to be too much, then you need to consider that. Anyway, food for thought. Like, you know, we can see as this consumes solder, it's gonna fill up way past 10 here. All right, one more. Oh, one more. Boom, fills up to 37%. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. Like, it's gonna fill up to probably that full 600. 'Cause this has 200, 300, 400. I don't know how much the pump itself buffers. But there's at least 400 ready to get pumped out. Yeah, and it goes up to 490. So, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, that's just food for thought. You guys can do with that what you will, but it's important to note that overflow and underflow does not actually work perfectly. Because of how fast the pumps are. And String Weasel, if you're watching this and there's any chance that can be fixed, that would be awesome. I don't even know how it would be fixed. I guess it would need to do things it probably can't do. Like, it would need to know. Yeah, I actually don't know if that can be fixed, because how would you fix it? Like, this top-up valve would need to know how much fluid storage there is in the destination. I don't know if that's something it can measure easily. If this knew the destination amount, it could lower the amount it moves per tick. Well, again, I don't even know if it can lower the amount it moves per tick. But if it was capable of lowering the amount it moves per tick in the mod settings or in the game code, then it could lower its output amount if the amount it's filling is lower, so that it can't surpass a full 10% per tick, if that makes sense. Anyway, I'm moving on. You guys are like, God, play the game already. So I will. I do actually have a good system here, right? I guess it's gonna kick the hot air back into the system, but that's okay because I'll delete hot air only in the event that the input hot air is completely full. And this hot air is completely full. That's the only case I would even delete hot air. So that's the other thing to ask yourself is, like, does it even matter if I delete 50 hot air once in a blue moon? Actually, wait. No, I digress. Digress is the wrong word. I'm just wrong. It will never delete hot air, because the only time this would switch off of the hot air recipe is if this has room in it. So it literally cannot delete hot air in this setup. Okay, we're good to go. Anyway, sorry guys. That's a lot of the episode kind of faffing about with RS latches and recipe switches, but I think you all find this interesting. I know I do. Now what's next? Designing rail infrastructure, you say? Yes, indeed. So, rails. I would like to actually switch. I'm gonna save the game, and we're gonna switch over to the lab editor, which is in the editor extensions, settings, testing lab, personal. Oop. So now we can go over to the testing lab here. Is there a way to like minimize this? There we go, none. So what are we doing here? We need a rail blueprint for the ages to solve all the problems forever. How do we do it? Well, it starts with some rails. I'm not designing this for elevated rails yet. Maybe I should. Let's consider that for a moment. Should I design this with elevated rails in mind? I'm kind of iffy about that because I don't remember why I have all these pistols, but let's delete it. Elevated rails, can we easily add them in later? That's the thing, is it's like, it's not that easy to add them in later. But they're also really expensive right now. They're like really expensive. A lot of intermetallics, a lot of refined concrete. So I only push backwards my whatchamacallit. So what is going on with the total raw down there? 2.8 million coal gas. That's really funny. But yeah, I'm just pushing back my rail base even further if we install these. So I'm just gonna say no for now. People have been playing pyanodons for a long time without elevated rails, and they've been fine. So maybe someday I'll design new intersections that fit with the old ones that use elevated rails. So maybe I should just think about it as I'm designing this one to like leave space. But yeah. Okay, so what spacing do I want? Do I want 1, 2, or 3? I think I'm gonna do 3. I'm gonna do large enough blocks that the spacing isn't really gonna come back to bite me. That's my plan anyway. And what's thing number 2? Thing number 2 is figure out how big we want the squares. Or maybe thing number 2 is design the intersection. Now in my last season, I want to say we designed the intersection such that we had the like station right off of a corner. It's kind of a weird way to do it. Do I want to do that the same? Or do I want to put stations off the middle this time? I think this time I want to do stations off the middle of a straightaway. So we'll design the straightaway such that we can put a station exit on it. Oh, there's so many things to consider with a train base. I'm very excited though. So first, let's start with train signaling. For those that are new to trains and you're like, I want to make an intersection. How do I do that? The easy answer is just put chain signals everywhere. Like honestly, that literally just works. Not quite everywhere. You do need regular signals at the end. The simple rule is that you need, and we need a train signal. Whatchamacallit here? Quick bar. But yeah, the simple rule is that you need chain signals going into all intersections and merges, and then you need a single regular signal at the end in a spot where there's enough room in front of that signal for there to be a full train. So let's say our trains were 1-1 trains, then this would be fine. because there's enough room in front of this guy for a full train in front of it. And then, yeah, let me just add some signals, add some rails, add some train stops, add some locos. Okay. I'm thinking this isn't gonna work left turn wise because it's probably too... Yeah, they're all gonna overlap with each other. What if I... Yeah, I mean, what if I just literally have the, like... Huh. Hold on, I'm gonna try this. Ooh. It looks nice, but I don't know if it's gonna work. So chain signal in... Technically, you want to chain signal before them. Well, it's really after splits and merges. Yeah, the problem is we can't add any right here, so that makes that really messy. Let's just see if that has any good impact here. No, we still have not split. So you can see how all this middle is yellow. That means a train going left would block a train going right, which is very much what we don't want. Okay, so let's try again. I might pause the recording at some point here if we really get into the weeds and just kind of work on it on my own for a little bit and then come back to you with kind of the solution. Because I don't want you guys to be like super duper bored here. We could also start the left turn a little bit further back. We could increase our spacing. We could do left turns after, you know, we cross over and do this sort of thing. You know, there's all sorts of possibilities. It's just a question of what actually works. I like compact intersections where I can. So I'd like this to be fairly compact. So that one didn't work. What if I actually go one further? Oops. What am I doing? Line up the crossbars. And then, yeah, what if I go to this one and do a left turn? I'm just feeling like we're not going to have enough space no matter how we do this. But there's a... maybe. Because I can fit one there. This could work. It's very tight, but it could... Ooh. Ooh la la. This could work. Because there's this one spot here that still fits. Okay, so again, after a split... So like this. Oh, shoot. We can't put one on that section. It's possible that that still works. We'll find out. Okay, so those all going that way, and then the one's coming in. Going straight, we need to cut that one. That one. Going right, we're good to go. Going left, we cut there, and that's the only place I... Oh, I can cut there as well. But is that the same one I used? To go straight? Oh no, this is confusing. Going straight, Yeah, when I rotate, it's always the one. If we go straight out, it's the one clockwise. So if I go straight out, yeah, I've already used that one, so I can't use that one for the merge. Anyway, I'm gonna pause the recording and just mess with this for a bit. I'll be back. All right, we're back. So this is the design I came up with. Seems to work fine. I realize it's probably not the most efficient intersection, but I'm not too worried about train traffic, especially because we can convert things to elevated rails later if we have some intersections that are super busy. So I'm really just not too worried about it. I do understand that we have left turns causing issues. There are ways that you can set up rails so that, like, if the northbound train is turning left and a southbound train is turning left, they can do so without getting in each other's way. Whereas in my build here, they are. The main thing to note when you're designing intersections is that, like, is a train going straight or turning right here gonna mess with a train going straight or turning right here? And as long as the answer to that is no, then you've already got a fairly efficient intersection, right? Like, the only turns that really mess with stuff is left turns. Everything else is fine. Like, a train going straight here doesn't mess with any more paths than it needs to. So yeah, that is good to go. I tried removing, I originally had a couple more chain signals and I removed a few just because they weren't necessary. Like, there was one here and here, or no, sorry, I think it was just this one. And that's like, that's not necessary. That doesn't really change anything. It does mean that this blue, this light blue, is cleared up slightly sooner. So as soon as a train butt leaves the light blue, then it clears up the light blue for a different train to start going straight. But that was true already. So I guess it's more like... Actually, yeah, I don't think that has any bearing on anything. So there's probably even a few more I could remove. Like, I thought about this one, and it's like, does this matter? And it does, because if a train's trying to go straight here, and a train's going straight on this one, as soon as the train butt clears this yellow line, then a train can start going straight here. Whereas if we didn't have that, a train going straight here would have to wait until the train clears over here. So there's a pretty significant difference there, in terms of timing. And so that one I think is worth a signal. But, like, if you were really trying to be Spartan, you could remove that one and it would, you know, only decrease your train throughput by like 1 a minute or something. Because signals cost circuits, right? So every signal we use is another circuit we're gonna have to spend on a train intersection. But anyway, that's the basics. So now what I want to do is think about the actual usable space in a block. And by the way, we'll design a T-junction, which will just remove, you know, all the unnecessary signals and tracks. We'll do that here in a minute. But for now, let's just assume the plus kind of shape junction. And we'll also have to think about how many signals we put along each straightaway. I want everything to be rotationally symmetric. There's all sorts of requirements that I have. So let's think about size here. So the intersection itself kind of has a 16 by 16 triangle that we're dealing with here. So kind of the real base. We need like a border of 8 or so. Or 7 by 7 border, I guess. So then if I want, like, say 200 by 200 usable area per block with that little 7 by 7 border, then what's that look like? Also, did I screw up the signal when I deleted that one? Did I put it back? Do I have 28 here? I do have 28 here. Okay. All right, so then this would go right here. Is that right? I think that's right. Yeah. This seems like it might be a little on the small end. We'll have to investigate. Are you too small? Maybe. Maybe not. That's a pretty big area. You know, let's imagine what kind of buildings are we gonna get up to here? You know, we got a big fluid storage area. We got ourselves some, I don't know, what's like a big building? A seaweed farm. You know, we've got a big seaweed crop area in this zone. And then we need to do a bunch of alg processing too. So those are over here. And we've got 2 of those. This feels reasonable. I can easily, and like I said, we're gonna have a modular system. So I can easily do a 2x1 or you know, whatever. Now the question is, this feels big enough until I add in stations. Train stations are the tricky part. So we might need to go a little bigger once we figure out what our stations look like. So let's start working on that. So stations, and I am using 1-1 trains. So we're gonna have a minimum of 1 train buffer before we have a station kind of offshoot. And I'm trying to decide right now how I feel about, because trains can't do U-turns. And because of that, if I have stations like this, then that means a train coming down this way can't really access this station easily. Unless I put in a left turn to that station, right? And so I'm trying to decide, do we want to do left turns into stations? Do we want to only do right turns? Oh, by the way, I didn't mention this. I switched to 4 wide. I just thought that looked a little cleaner. Yeah. I think what I want is... Oof, this is so tricky. I kind of liked what I did last time. I'm wondering if I should redesign around that, but maybe not. What I did last time was kind of it was an interesting situation because I could, I forget exactly what I did, but basically I had the stations like attached to the corners rather than the sides. So the train stackers. Do we want trains to be able to stack up? And I think the answer is no. I think I want my train limits pretty small. I want it to be modularly expandable so that I can easily add more train stations onto a certain build. So I don't want it to be hard to add extra stations. It's a lot of requirements I'm having. What if I did something like this? Hold on. Idea time. What if it was expandable this way? But see, the problem with that is then the more stations I have, the more it messes with the signaling of these straightaways. So it's almost like I need like a runner here that they merge back onto before. This might still work out okay. Let me kind of think my way through this. So we've got something like this, but it needs to be able to turn left as well. Oof. Because then if it enters this, it can only go straight, right, or left. But what if it wanted to go, you know, to somewhere over here? I kind of want it to be able to turn left onto this, but then that requires a different set of train tracks to do this, which then impinges on this build, which I don't like. So like if I'm gonna have it do that, I want it to be impinging on the area we're already impinging on, if that makes sense. So I want it to look something like this, which is way messier. Which almost makes me feel like this would be the exit line. Oh, goodness. Ah! Train designs are hard, man. This is where elevated rails could be helpful. Because I kind of want the stations to be expandable. Do I want them to be expandable just in line? And then they go back to the area they came in? I mean, that's almost the simplest. Maybe we just don't worry too much about having a sort of big train station area. And we just do the classic like this. This and this. And then this. I guess that one's slightly better. Okay, so that needs to connect here. Like that. Okay. So yeah, I mean, maybe we just do something like this. It does take up a decent part of the block, and then it leaves these weird sections to expand into. But the nice part is it doesn't affect... It can turn left or right, and it can even go back into itself if you had some situation where you weren't using ingredients inside the same block. So this actually feels pretty reasonable to me. And then it's easily expandable because you can just add more stations, you know, this way. So as for like the very first station, you know, it can be here. And I haven't done any of the number crunching yet on like, you know, are these long enough or whatever. So if we have an actual train stop, this leaves us enough space for, where are my steel chests at? This leaves us enough space for a train here. And then signal, and then one buffer train. Because if that goes straight and we were to like copy this, and how much spacing do we want them to have by default? Probably by default, I want them to have less spacing. And I can always delete one line if we need to, but this would probably be my default. It's just one bank of inserters. And if we need, well, but we might want to do loaders sometimes, which need 2 squares. So maybe the default should be one more space like that. And then we can easily do loaders into and out of It doesn't leave a lot of space for loaders out, though. That only leaves space for, like, a few belts. So if we have mixed inputs, we'd want extra space. But for things that are mostly just 1 or 2 things, this is plenty of space. You know, and we can easily have 2 belts coming in from afar. Well, I say easily, not that easily, but like we can do 1 belt does this, and the other belt does this, and there's 2 belts in. And then we can do 2 belts into the train. You know, so this is... We can reasonably get 2 belts in, which means 4 items out. Okay, this feels like enough spacing for a default, to me, at least. All right, and then we do regular signals after. And then the question is, can we fit... Yeah, we'll do a chain signal there. Oh no, the train should always have space, so we'll do a regular signal. At the beginning of each of one of these. And then there's space for one buffer train behind each regular train. So my train limits should be 1. I wish I knew if Cybersyn obeyed train limits. We're gonna solve so many train problems in this playthrough. I can already feel it. I can already feel it. I don't know if it's a good thing. LOL. But yeah, you know, something like this should work fine. And yeah, this is all reasonable. Now, the only thing is that one of these on this side is going to interfere with one of them on the other side. Actually, it's not. That's perfect. Okay, so I want to set up the signaling so that it doesn't interfere with one on the other side, if that makes sense. So that way we can kind of place these however we want, and they don't interfere with each other. I actually like that a lot. I know it leaves this weird space on the left, but I can utilize that with buildings and belts. Like, we'll figure it out. I just think it's far more convenient to have it set up this way. And I think it's worth a little bit of the inconvenience of, like, it spaces out your block a little weird. I think it's worth that inconvenience. Okay, so how many do I want in the most basic level? I think 3. I think 3 train stations. Like, in most blocks, I'm gonna want 3 train stations, right? Like, there's very few blocks where I'm gonna want less than 3 train stations. And then here we need a chain signal there or there. Here. Regular signal. Chain signal. Regular signal. Chain signal. I think that's good. And then do we need to measure these out in a certain way? Do we need to space them out in a certain way? Because the straightaways, like, I don't want the straightaways to conflict at all with these station sets. And so we need the straightaways to have the same regular signals in the same spots, if that makes sense. So what I'll probably do is just design it around having these, and then we'll add a couple into the straightaways where they wouldn't conflict with these, if that makes any sense. Okay, and then this one needs to actually be a chain signal, because that one could be going over a crossing. So then we can make it to there, we're good. Here, if it's going straight, it needs to make it to there. And then Those are the only two directions it can go. And here we need a chain signal. If it can go straight, we're good. This one could probably have a double on it. Yeah. So that way we can buffer a train or two to wait here if they're going straight, and then why don't I have that across from that one? That just makes sense. Okay, so then that's there. Put that across from that one. And then do I need a chain here? Does it do anything? It just means that... What does putting a chain signal here accomplish? It would mean that if a train is turning left, it will allow a train that's going straight to... Oh, no, this is bad. Yeah, we have a train going this way, interfering with a train going that way. We definitely need a signal here. My bad. Yes. Definitely need a signal here. But all of these train, it's okay that this all shares one color, because all of these colors... Basically, another kind of rule of thumb that you can think about train signals is if one block of color shares trains that wouldn't actually hit each other, then you have a problem, right? This train going straight and this train going straight would not hit each other, but they're sharing this yellow block. So that's a problem. We need to slice up things in such a way that they're not sharing a block. And we actually want this block to be cleared as soon as possible, because if that train gets out of this yellow way, then another one can go straight. So I think you want it to be put as soon after the split as possible. Now here we have a similar idea where like we could do it like that so that a train going straight, but then we have the yellow block, so I'd have to do that. And it's like, is that really worth 3 signals? Given that a train is only going to go this way if it can make it anyway? Probably not. That's for like absolutely maximizing throughput. This one is just straight up necessary. All right, I'm feeling pretty good about this actually. And we've got room for a few buffered trains before an intersection. And then this section. Yeah, I mean, if we wanted to be consistent, I could just put a chain signal at the very start, like that, instead of these two. It'll slow things down a little bit, though. But it might look a little nicer. Always the question, aesthetics or... It also saves me a circuit, for what it's worth. Okay, what else needs to change? Kind of want this to feel... I guess it's not going to feel symmetrical. But those are symmetrical. It's almost like I want them to be symmetrical, like here. That chain signal with that chain signal. Yeah, and then a couple regular signals inside. Couple regular signals inside here. I don't know if I can get a couple, but we've got 2. Ooh, we don't even get 2? Ah, that makes me feel like I can move. That's inconvenient. literally 1 square away from fitting 2 trains in here. Also worth noting, this is wider than it needs to be anyway. So maybe we actually shorten the whole thing. Right? Because this can hold 3 wagons. And I'm only going to be buffering 1 at a time at most. So why don't we shorten the whole thing by like 2 tracks or 3 tracks even, and see if that works. Okay, let's see what that does. So that still has room to buffer, that still has room. These still have room to buffer an output train, which is kind of nice, because the whole train limit thing does not think about as soon as the train moves on with its life, like it no longer counts towards the train limit. And so if you were backed up on the output, you'd be screwed over by your train limits. So you always want to make sure the output can flow freely, if that makes sense. So having a buffer for each output train is nice, because that means if 4 trains leave at the same time, we're not going to be backing up on the input side, because those 4 trains will all be able to sit here until they can stream out. So that works. And then this just won't have space for an extra train, so I don't need an extra signal. This will have space for an extra train, so I can do an extra signal. Maybe here. And then that's room for 1 more train. Okay. So that, I think, is good to go. We can easily expand and add more trains here. Do we want this to be a... No, this should be a chain as well. I only want them... I mean, the problem is they'll hold up the whole thing. So this almost doesn't matter what signal this is. Because if I do a chain, it's saying, hey, stop here until you can get all the way into this block that you're wanting to be in, right? But like, if they can't get into one of these blocks in the first place, that means I've already messed up my train limit system. So this one really shouldn't matter, because they should never stop behind one of these signals. It just shouldn't be possible with the way I'm setting up my train system. So because of that, I don't really think this signal matters. And on the off chance something goes wrong, if it happens to be on one of the stations down here, at least that way we can get out of the way of the main line first. So if anything weird does happen with train limits, I think that's a better method anyway. But yeah, I think we want train limit to be 1 or 2. Sorry, I don't know why I said 1. I mean, I know why I said 1. It dealt with last season and what I was doing last season. But here, I think 2 is the proper limit, because we'll have 1. Another one can line up behind it, and then no more will be sent. And then as soon as this one decides it's done, then now there's an open slot again, but these trains will all shift forward by 1. So it really should properly work to have a train limit of 2. I can't remember what happened last season and why. I feel like maybe I didn't have the output buffer last season, and that's why things were different. Because last season I remember there was some sort of issue and the train limit felt like it was 1 smaller than it looked like it should be. The other thing I don't know is if CyberSyn combinators care 1 bit for train limits, or if you set train limits in the CyberSyn combinators. I need to read up the documentation on CyberSyn and like a starter guide, because I've never used these before. I've used a lot of LTN, but normally when a delivery is requested, any train with a large enough cargo capacity may fulfill it. When the setting is checked, trains must also be on the station's allow list. Whoa. Trains are automatically added to the allow list if each of its wagons are able to be loaded or unloaded by inserters or pumps along this station. I don't understand that. I mean, I sort of get it. Okay, so you can have straight up different networks. By default, it both requests and provides. Activity condition. Circuit condition, check mark greater than 0. Stack thresholds. When checked, all requests thresholds for the station are interpreted as it can. Okay, that all feels understandable. So do we need both per train station? I think you do. Station priority. Network masks. Network encoder GUI. Control left click on a second. What is going? Oh my god, what am I getting myself into? Only virtual signals are allowed. Okay. Network okay, so this is what we thought. Or this is like LTN. So -1 is the same as that? Is that the overflow amount, probably? Oh, certain numbers just are interpreted as a negative of that size. But the 32, I assume if we check that off, then it's a positive number. Yeah, so that's just like, it's using the negatives and the positives to represent a total number of numbers that are about 4 billion. But you can only be 2.15 billion on either side of 0. Anyway, this is how we're gonna do our trains. We'll talk about this later, but basically we're gonna have a trash network, like a byproduct network, and then we're gonna have like a main network for different things. And then maybe I'll use some of the other numbers, but like something that's a major requesters will always have all the networks selected, but essentially providers will only provide on the main network, and then byproducts will only provide on the byproduct network and the main network. But then the main network requesters will have a higher priority to request than the trash network requesters. The trash network requesters will only request from byproduct providers, which will be basically on channel 2, and they'll have a low priority. So basically, if we are providing on channel 2, that means it's a byproduct. And then only the trash requesters will only request something if the main requesters have already gotten what they want, because it'll be a lower priority request. So by doing that, you kind of have a similar system to like a splitter with input priority and output priority. And that way you can handle stuff like ash or, you know, Coke, where it's like, oh, I have more Coke than I need, so let's get rid of this. And then we might need to make something, a whole station that deletes Coke at some point. Locked slots per cargo wagon, station priority. We assume higher priority is more priority. So the byproduct providers will have a higher priority in terms of providing, and the byproduct requesters, aka the trashing stations, will have a low priority request. Everything else will be normal priority. And you can do negatives here from what I've heard. So all of that put together, I think we're sort of starting to understand this. I know this has been a longer episode, but let's finish this episode with getting our straight sections configured. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to copy this and flip it so that it fits here. And then I'm gonna copy just the signals from this whole range. And then we're gonna clear out the rails. And then we're gonna paste that along a straight section where it lines up, which is a little hard to see. Might be easier to do from map view, to be honest. Not with all those little dots. Turn off the dots, please. Okay, so that's lined up. And now we delete all the ones that don't make any sense, which are gonna be chain signals along either side. I just realized we probably need to add, I don't know, that actually seems like a decent cut now that I'm looking at it. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 per straightaway. Yeah, you know what? I was gonna say we could add one more to the middle here. Is that really necessary? I think it might be. I think this feels like a place we can easily get one more, so let's do it. So do one there. And then this reflected. Okay. So that's gonna be our straightaway. I made a decon planner for signals as well. So now I can copy these signals again. Delete the rails. Paste the signals onto map view. And then remove the chains from where they need not be. Chain. All right. Boom, boom, boom. And that one's pointless. Okay, so now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Perfect. And then if I wanted to paste in the station, I could. Which, I don't like that it's only flipping horizontally because of the merging chests. One thing you can do is you can unmerge them, and then it can rotate anyway, but then you just have to merge after you paste your blueprint. I don't know which is going to be easier in the long run. Probably leaving them unmerged to start. It does require construction bots to do more work, though. I think the merged version is easier for con bots to build. I don't know that for sure, though. But yeah, I think we're going to call it an episode here. In the next episode, we'll work on getting all these blueprints actually created and lined up with the, the snap to grid stuff. And we'll make the T-junction version. We'll see if we can figure out how to basic wire up the cybernetic combinators to start. But we've at least got a good start on our train network. Who knows how the base is doing? I assume everything's backed up and we've got all sorts of things broken, but We're building up green science. I should probably do some green science. Anyway, we're going to call it an episode there. As always, thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you all in the next episode.